Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the UPC Insights, the podcast where we dive deep into the latest developments in the world of the European patent litigation. I'm your host, George Walden. Thanks for joining us today. Today, our show is going to revolve around the service part of the Unitary Patent Court, the UPC, and that's going to be pretty interesting about the claims and how we go about them. And joining me today to help us explaining all this is our highly experienced UPC representative and esteemed litigator, Mr. Julian Würmser. Julian, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, George. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So today, more on the basic topic, service. When you guys talk about service, the first thing that always comes to mind, since I'm a sportsman, is Wimbledon, like tennis, Carlos Alcaraz, or the Yannick Sinner, in theory. So you train hard, you carefully study your opponent, you think about your opponent's weaknesses, you use your strength, and you pick the spot in the field of the opponent's, hopefully the blind spot, and then you perform your first service. Now, with all that being said, Julian, is that a pretty accurate picture?
Generally, George, I love your picture. It's a really nice picture, I have to say. And but of course, with us lawyers, always the same thing. The topic goes deeper, and we have to say the picture is so accurate. So what is correct? So correct is that for this initial service, and thinking about our tennis serve, our first serve, we really prepare hard for that. It's also true that this is kind of the first move in public. So normally you kind of under the water, you're preparing, you're getting ready for your lawsuit. And like the service is the first time when the case really kind of hits the surface and you can really see it. And also, there always will be a return. I think here also the parallel is very nice. So the next step is basically 3 months or 4 months down the road. The defendant is going to reply to that, and so we have our perfect tennis match. That's also accurate. Still, you've been talking about this a lot, talking about front-loaded.
Right.
I'm a little bit unsure whether the tennis ball is the right size, as we have seen before. What has to go into the first statement of claim. Basically, we said everything. So maybe a basketball might be the better size, or actually, I saw on a lake, I saw this like inflatable balls where you can actually step inside and run over water.
Exactly.
You know these?
Yeah.
Maybe that's the accurate size of the ball that we are initially serving. So there's a difference. Like you really put a lot into your first ball. So, yeah, as said, the service is much more complex, and of course there are a few formalistic aspects to that we maybe have to tackle later. But in general, I like the picture.
Okay, good. I appreciate the fact. So then if you like my picture, then that's pretty interesting. But are you saying that you are getting to choose whom you want to sue in an action claim? And if that's the case, that sounds pretty fun, Julian.
Yeah, that's actually another differentiating feature over our tennis match. In tennis, you always get to choose. In tennis, you never get to choose whom to play. There's a ranking, and you have to kind of play
Work
against
your way up,
the guy. Yeah. And in our litigation, there's always, or normally, if you're talking about bigger companies, there's always a bunch of potential defendants. And so here you really carefully, as an initial strategical consideration, you think about whom am I going to sue? And actually a big part about this consideration, whom you're going to sue, is also who is the guy that I can service to best? Because service is sometimes a really problematic topic. We'll talk about this in a couple of minutes. And so as said, there are a bunch of potential defendants, so you kind of can work your way up and down the goods and service value of chain. So basically you can, if you want to talk about a little chip or something, you could go down and kind of try to hit the manufacturer of the chip. You can kind of try to get the guy that imports the chip maybe into the European market or in the territory of the UPC.
Okay.
You can get some distributor within Europe, for example, or maybe you can get some bigger manufacturer who kind of uses the chip to finally sell an end product. So all of these are different entities. All of these could be theoretically sued. And on top of that, you have the situation that normally, like most of these entities, they are groups. There's a mother company, there's a sister company. And so here again, you kind of get to choose whom you want to go after. And as already said, when determining whom am I going to sue, service might not be the last question to consider. So that's also kind of important.
Let's come back to our topic, service. How does service with the UPC work exactly?
So, if you want to do it really simple, you're going to service an entity of one of the members of the UPC, and that it would just simply be a registered letter to the defendant with a return, and basically that would be performed by the local division themselves. Yeah.
So then what are the pitfalls of working with the service then?
Like the only pitfall, if we are talking about this very simple example here, could be, but I mean, that's actually not a good example for that. It could be translation. So normally it is not that easy, or in a lot of cases, you don't only service in Europe. Like normally you have multiple defendants. And
right.
You might also service abroad. And so one pitfall is sort of that you have to provide an accurate translation into the language of the defendant. And so if you kind of draft your statement of claim rather lengthy, that actually might generate significant costs.
Okay.
And so you have to watch out a little bit for the costs. And then, as said, once you leave your very, very simple example of servicing somewhere in Europe, it might get, from a formalistic aspect, it might be very interesting. And actually, service might be very challenging. And that's actually a big pity because, as I said, it's a quite common situation where you have multiple defendants.
Okay.
And normally you always we already talked about kind of the submarine, the underwater preparation of your claim.
Right.
And then kind of the sudden appearance where you kind of show up on the field and you do your service.
Right.
And sometimes this beautiful scenario that you construe gets totally messed up because kind of you can service one of the entities very easily. So that's how the potential defendants, they become aware of your action. On the other side, the other guy you cannot service or you're running into problems. And so here this kind of the powerful first appearance kind of gets torn apart. And so in the end, you might be sitting around for 3-4 months until you finally kind of perform service to each entity. And that's kind of not a very promising start of your proceedings.
I can imagine. So then, Julian, so you're saying that there's a chance that it's impossible to serve your statement of a claim at all. Is that true, or are you convinced with that?
No, not at all. So, generally, it might be a big pain in the neck with the service, but as far as I'm aware, almost always at some point, sooner or later, we manage to service. It's just this momentum that gets really lost. And as explained, this is not a super good start. And I think maybe this is a good chance to kind of step into one of the most recent decisions that the local division of Milan handed out, because it kind of it shows very service generally it has been a topic in a couple of orders, but it's kind of not the most prominent topic, and it is not beloved. We litigators, we like to litigate, and service is kind of this little painful first thing. So it's not our favorite topic, and that's why I think this Milan decision that they handed out, I think it was mid or end of January, is maybe a quite nice one. So one of the biggest pain points for service has always been on the national jurisdiction as well as on the international one, has always been China. And this Milan decision, it actually tackles a quite common situation or scenario where there was a need. There were basically two defendants. One of the defendant, it was kind of a mother company and sister company constellation. And so one of the defendant was located in the mainland of China, and one of them was located in Hong Kong. When you come to, at the beginning, I try to explain kind of the most simple situation where you service in Europe. That's pretty easy. Actually, the US normally also kind of turns out to be a quite easy service country. And China is a little bit more complicated. So there's the so-called Hague Service Convention. And that's a convention that kind of tackles the idea, how do I internationally service? Generally, like this Hague Service Convention is a really nice thing because it's something where you can basically look up as a national court for each country, how can I perform service? And thus, how can I kind of enable jurisdiction? And that's really, really important because if you can't service, normally everything stops. So this is a really central point. And so the Hague Service Convention, what does it say about China? It basically says about China, you have to go to the International Legal Cooperation Center in Beijing for service. So you deliver your statement of claim to them, and they ought to kind of perform service by whatever means necessary. We don't have to dig into this any deeper. And so with this Milan division case, we kind of had these two Chinese entities, Hong Kong and mainland. And after kind of a going there, coming back, going there situation, they were able to actually serve to the Hong Kong entity. And then when it came to servicing to the mainland entity, they kind of found out that within the statement of claim, there was a terminology that basically said Hong Kong. So some of the actions took place in Hong Kong, and it was mentioned. And they believed that it should read Hong Kong, China. And that's why this central authority of China kind of refused to return service. So what they basically did, they played the whole thing back to the local division of Milan and said, your statement of claim is flawed.
I see. Okay.
It might be the right addressees that you put kind of on the envelope that you sent to us, but we already kind of looked into the statement of claim, and that's flawed. It must read Hong Kong, China.
Wow.
And the Milan division, they looked at this and they kind of checked this, and I mean, they are not really empowered to change kind of the statement of claim. I mean, they can change the envelope, how they send it to the central authority. And I'm not saying that they cannot change the statement of claim at all, because they could get into interaction with the claimant. But I mean, this is a very uncommon request. And
would you say it is a tactic or something like that by China for the
I'm with the most recent politics, I'm very careful about saying anything about tactics. It's let's just call it interesting. And I mean, we also kind of have to kind of put this into a time perspective. So basically at that point in time, they already had tried to kind of service multiple times. A couple of months already had lapsed. And so they checked, and from my perspective, they came to the right conclusion that the central authority of China cannot request this amendment for service. So what they then did, they came to the conclusion, we on our side, we fulfilled all the required formal aspect that basically the Hague Service Convention dictates.
Okay.
So we serviced. So they simply said, like, I mean, we checked this. The formal aspect that's currently raised is not a valid point. So we did everything right. So this accounts as service.
Okay.
And since they came to this conclusion, they issued an order, and that's the order that I'm talking about. So that's the order that kind of was published in January. And now comes a little catch. When you issue an order, again, you normally have to serve the order. So here, back to ground zero. Back to zero.
So who do you serve it to?
So how like in traditional proceedings, kind of the first step, once you establish initial service to an entity, you basically you agree or you determine means to digitally service under the UPC, and that works beautifully. So normally, only the initial service is kind of pain, but once you have done this, like all the following up orders, all these following up submissions, they get serviced very easily, more or less over the platform from the UPC. But here we never had a true service. Nevertheless, the Milan division, they kind of said, we have a service, but they still haven't solved the problem of servicing. So here they got kind of back in the situation where they said, now we need to service the order. And so at that point, they, to a certain degree, became creative. And they said, like, we're just going to do public service, which basically means they publish this order on their website. Decided, so that's kind of the last resort. If you cannot service at all, you kind of put it somewhere out in the public. Allow a certain time period lapse.
Interesting.
And then it's considered service. So this is sort of what they kind of did here. They put it on the website and said, thereby our order is also serviced. So they sort of kind of worked that problem and arrived at a situation where they successfully established service from their perspective. And of course, as a litigator, I think, hey, that's great. That's really, really effective.
So, Julian, just before I get to the next question, it's pretty interesting. Are you saying that like in this case with China against Milan, that China was going out of their way to not be available? So could I say that, or not be approachable because you couldn't serve them the normal way, or?
Like we always kind of see this in a context. Like it's been like I mean, from my perspective, in the last 20 years, China came a very long way. So when I initially started in this field and we wanted to go after a Chinese entity, the traditional way always used to be that they had basically no location within Germany. They had no location within Europe. They only had somewhere hidden in the backlands of China some entity that would produce the product.
Wow.
And they would just fly in. So they also would not have any sales representative in Europe or something. They would just fly in, come to an exhibition, show their products, try to kind of sell these products without generating any public proof of anything, and basically fly back home. And so we always had, like, I mean, with our customers, a lot of Europeans, we always had the big issue that you could never get a hold. Like our clients would come to us and say, on the trade fair, like, I mean, there are 50 Chinese entities. They're all kind of selling our products, and they're all infringing. So how do we get them? And what we did then, we kind of established service at trade fairs. And so the only way how you could get these entities then was kind of let them arrive at the trade fair, let them put up their nice booth, start selling or kind of advertising the products, taking pictures of everything, put in a kind of night action, a statement of claim together, file it, and then basically on the next day, go there with a bailiff, serve it on the booth, and that's how you could sort of grasp them. As I said, this is 20 years ago. From my perspective, like China has developed beautifully. I mean, they have become some real players on the European market.
Mm-hmm.
So what we had then is not what we have today.
Gotcha.
But nevertheless, in the back of our heads, like, I mean, service to China
Right.
always used to be challenging. And what we currently have as kind of international way of servicing in China is, let's say, at least complicated. There are other countries that make it much more easier to service an entity nationally. I shortly mentioned the US, and normally you will always achieve pretty quick service in the US. In China, it often tends
Not
to
so
be
much.
a touch more problematic.
Oh, but that's pretty wild to hear. That's interesting. So, is this the end of an endless attempts to service in China, or has the UPC found a loophole, kind of like what we're talking about, effectively to perform service in China within a couple of days, maybe weeks?
Like, I mean, this idea of kind of publishing an order on the website and get it done with,
Yeah.
and basically saying like, I mean, we did everything right. It sounds very beautiful, but when you kind of study this order in depth, you see how hard the Milan division has been struggling. So essentially, I think it took more than 6 months. I think it was, no, actually, it was almost 12 months. It took almost 12 months until they finally took this last step of kind of issuing this order and stating that it was serviced properly now.
Yeah.
And because, like, I mean, you're really kind of reaching out with your jurisdiction into another country. And I think the UPC is very aware if they kind of stretch their power too far, the system is not gonna work out. Like, we are talking about anti-suit injunctions and so forth. So I think they took this decision very careful and very deliberate. So I don't see how this kind of, I mean, what the UPC kind of wanted to prove is like, I mean, we're gonna service. Like, I mean, if you don't behave
Right.
within the rules that are set out, we don't allow others to stall our system.
Okay.
But from my perspective, at the same time, they really carefully checked that they would not reach into the foreign jurisdiction too far.
Okay.
Because they understood that this would not be for the good of our system.
Okay. For the dynamics of trade or for everything else involved. But that's really interesting. I mean, it's kind of if you have to go after a company in China or something like that for patent infringement, it's still not going to be very easy to do. Easier than before, but maybe not.
I wouldn't say it's easy. It's like, I mean, it's challenging. The UPC is determined to deliver what it promised to do, but they will not take service lightly and kind of get away with all the international requirements that are set out there.
Excellent. Julian, thank you very much. I would like to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. That was probably one of the most interesting shows I've had so far this year, although I've only had one before this year. But anyways, and to our listeners, we would like to thank you for joining us for another episode of the UPC Insights. We look forward to bringing you all the latest developments in the world of the UPC Insights. And feel free to check out our past shows on YouTube, Instagram, and Spotify. Like I said, I'd like to thank our guest, Julian Würmser. Julian, it was really interesting talking with you. I learned quite a bit, and I'm sure our listeners have too. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you, George. Take care.
Take care. Have a nice evening. Ciao.
Bye-bye.